Welcome to the Maria Heller Show, the Internet's original podcast. Since the year 2000, always ahead of the curve, always on your side. A true warrior for truth and justice, Maria and her guests leave nothing out, and no one is off limits. There is only one truth, the rest is lies. Sit back, enjoy the education with a true daughter of Mother Earth. Sharp New York wit, spiritual knowing, and a very dry sense of humor, Maria will dissect the news and lies to make it all palatable. Education is power. Maria delivers rapid-fire truth like no one else can. Here she is, the mouth that roars, the legendary Maria Heller.
Good morning, world. Maria here, alive and kicking. I'm glad you guys enjoyed the show I did yesterday. Quite a different take from the news, and today is going to be also a different take from the news. Today we're going to be talking about things that matter: spirituality, intuition, the reality that we live in. And I have a very special guest with me today. Her name is Monnica Sepulveda. She is an intuitive therapist. She's a numerologist. She's been on TV shows throughout the country, from Maury Povich to Jerry Springer. She's been a gifted telepath and empath since she was born. And her specialty is what she calls solution-oriented intuitive therapy. So I'm very happy to have Monnica with me on the show. Good morning, Monnica.
Good morning, Maria. It's good to be here.
It's good to have you here.
Yeah. Most of the work I do these days are mediumship, because there's a lot of people losing loved ones. A lot of people are leaving this planet, so they contact me to make connection with their loved ones that are just leaving, you know. I mean, look at the state of this world. A lot of people can't handle it, you know. You have to raise your vibratorial frequency in order to be able to stay here. So I really definitely utilize the quotations and the things that Albert Einstein said to raise our own frequency to match that, because this planet is energy, and if we match our frequency to what we want and see it, visualize it, feel it, we will have it.
Right. Well, you know, the couple of shows I've done recently, one with Carl Callahan, who wrote the nine waves of creation, and then the last time I spoke with David Icke, we were talking about frequencies.
Yeah.
And everything is frequencies.
Exactly. If people get that it's not a philosophy, it's physics. This planet is all about energies, and our own energies, we broadcast our bandwidth to the planet, and if we're not in a good state, we're going to attract not good things. If we're in a place where we're centered in love, let go of all religion, because I think that's the creation of all bad things on this planet. So I'm a spiritual person, and by staying in a center of love, then not only do we send that energy to this planet, which heals all things, but it also keeps us centered to allow ourselves to, create a masterpiece. Unless we want to create a mess, a lot of people just don't know this information.
Right, exactly. Well, you know, how many years have people used the expression, thoughts have wings? But I don't know that they really pay attention to that expression. But, you know, as you think, and then, God forbid, you put words and sound vibration behind it, then you're creating your reality.
And then visualizing it as well is so important. People, you know, back when I was growing up, of course, that was a long time ago, I used to have a great imagination, and my teachers would reprimand me, stop daydreaming. Well, I mean, that was actually a good thing.
Right. Well, I remember once, you know, I'm a visual artist, and I remember once getting called to school because my son was daydreaming. And while the principal was complaining to me about him daydreaming, I started going off into a daydream. And I looked at the principal and I said, listen, daydreaming is important, but I'll tell him not to do it in class. And it was funny because I believe there was a Simpsons show, the same exact story, where he gets called in because Bart's daydreaming, and you see his father going off into a million daydreams while the teacher's talking to him.
Well, you know what's interesting? I found that by having learning strategies, if you've got a teacher who's auditory and just goes on and on and on and on, we visuals will start daydreaming because they bore us. So they have to start teaching us through different methods, such as, visuals, having visuals to capture our attention and to move us emotionally. And also, not everybody's auditory. Some people are visual, some people are kinesthetic. So when you make an emotional impact on the student, then the student's going to learn if they're kinesthetic. Mm-hmm. So I found that I would get bored anytime I'd listen to, lectures, and I'd like, oh God, let me just go someplace else.
Exactly. Many years ago when I was offered a position teaching at the Desert Center in Scottsdale, mm-hmm. Where, every school in the valley has to go for a field trip to learn how to coexist in the desert because we have so many transplants here.
Yeah.
And I went through all the different programs that the other teachers were doing, and they were as boring could be. And I told the woman in charge, I said, listen, because she needed somebody to teach about the Hohokam that lived here 2,000 years ago. And I told her the only way I would do it is experientially. If she allowed me to create... Huh?
Like ayahuasca?
Well, not that much experiment. But I wanted her to allow me to create a medicine wheel in the desert, take these kids through some native music, have them smudge themselves, and teach them what it would have been like meeting other kids at that time. And they let me do it. And what was interesting is all the other teachers became very jealous. And they wanted to know what I was doing to these kids to make them behave because they came out of my group, according to them, like mm-hmm. they were in a trance. And I looked at them and I said, I listened to them.
Yeah, what a concept, Meria.
I know. But it was amazing what these kids would say and what would come out of their mouths, even though I was teaching it environmentally. These kids were all having, second, third graders. They were all having spiritual experiences. I remember one little girl saying when the music was over, because I had my good friend Ken play the flute, and I said, how did the music make you feel? And she said, I felt like a big spirit came down and sat next to me and is protecting me.
Wow. And these younger kids are older souls. The more that our people that are reincarnated, they're here to teach. And, I truly believe, in spite of the temporary illusionary chaos that we're going through at this point in time with that nut job in the White House calling himself a president, his days are numbered. I mean, next to his name, it'll say 45th president from 2017 to 2017.
Oh, I hope you're right. Well, speaking of his days are numbered. Well, a lot of astrologers have picked that up in Trump's astrology. But speaking of numbers, you also do numerology.
I do.
How important is the science of numbers?
Say that again?
How important is the science of numbers?
Oh my gosh, it is so accurate. I've been using it since the probably early 80s when I was an astrologer originally in the 70s using my intuitive abilities. Back in the day in the 20th century, we used to call it psychic ability, but that word is so offensive because it's so misinterpreted that I switched over to intuitive therapy because everyone is intuitive. So I started studying astrology, and it's such a complicated, difficult science, but I loved the challenge. And back then we didn't have computers, so we had to do everything by hand. Then I stumbled on numerology, and I thought, oh my gosh, these two coincide. They're saying the exact same thing. Nothing ever contradicted each other. And as I was using it for timing, when I do sessions with clients, I found that the predictions were much more precise when you utilize numbers. Mm-hmm. And so people that have, different experiences in their life, whether they're dramatic, positive, or negative, they usually end up falling into one of their three numbers. The three numbers would be, the destiny, the birth path, which is the birthday total, or even the day that they're born. There's 3 days, numbers rather, that coincide with monumental experiences that we have during life. And I decided to try that. And I listed 50 things and did the numbers on them, and they all totaled to the three numbers that were my main numbers. It's absolutely, amazing. And it's easy to study.
Right. I think it's quite fabulous. I'm not sure, how close you've been following the news over in the UK, but what was interesting when they had that Manchester bombing outside Ariana Grande's performance, there was so many 22s.
Yes. Absolutely. I was talking to David Icke, as a matter of fact, and he said, because he knows I do numbers, and he said, what's with the 22? So I told him it's a master number, It's the master builder, but every number has a flip side of the coin, so it can also be the destroyer. So now that makes sense. It's interesting how these things are not coincidental.
No, of course not. And I've been saying that to my listeners for 20 years. You look at how they use numerology, how they use astrology, but they always take the dark side, right? They always take the dark side of it to create their, nefarious events.
Absolutely, yeah. And a lot of people always say to me, I'm just one person, how can I make a difference? I said, that's everything.
All right.
You're one person. You can make a difference by changing your vibratorial frequency and raising your bandwidth to a high frequency. You coming from a pure place. If each person did that one at a time, the planet changes its frequency. But what happens is that the powers that be, quote unquote, or who think they're powers be, actually instill a lot of low frequencies such as fear, and that's what they're doing now with these attacks, which I believe are false flags. And with that fear, people don't realize that the definition of fear is an absence of love. So when you're doing the exact opposite, not only do you feed their agenda, but you keep your own frequency so low that it's almost like your bulb is dimming. And love brightens you up, it expands the aura, and it touches everyone that comes in our path, and so we send that out to the planet. Now, I personally disconnect from collective consciousness because it is at an all-time low right now. There's a lot of people that are afraid and a lot of animals that are suffering. So I send out love to those two, and I send a lot of love actually to politicians to change their thinking. And I see that it's working. Well, with one party it is. The other is going to come around. But my feeling is that if we each take responsibility and make that one shift, oh my gosh, everything would change. I have a little 3-minute video on YouTube called 3 Minutes with Monica that is something that everybody should watch, because in that time you change your frequency and throw that energy out to the planet, and you do your part.
Right.
So we are very powerful individually.
Right. We can actually change the frequency on this planet if we just realize that. Now, you said that you disconnect from this frequency. So, of course, I'm going to put you on the spot now. As a teacher, I'm going to ask you, how can my listeners disconnect from this frequency?
Okay, what I do is every morning before I get out of bed, I don't care if I have to pee, I won't get out of bed until I do my whole routine, my whole ritual, and it usually lasts like a half an hour, because I do not only that, but I count my blessings and thanks for my blessings. That's how I pray, by giving thanks. So, and even the miracles and blessings that haven't manifested, I give thanks for those in advance. So what I do is I connect my heart to the source of love. For some people, it's hard for them to visualize what love looks like, but it's a feeling. So I visualize a ray of light, and I connect to that source, and then I open my heart and receive it back, and I just feel really a vibration of warmth, and it feels good. So if you have a hard time connecting to something that's not non-human, like love is a feeling, then connect to a family member who's passed on that you loved intensely, and it does the same thing, because love is love. It doesn't have, you don't have to do it a certain way. This is why I think that in the original religion of Christianity, when Jesus, who was teaching love, he said you can reach the Godhead through me, because you could visualize a person, and that's what some people need, so they stick to religion. I don't. I believe we can go right to the source 24/7. So when I visualize my heart with the green beam of light, because that's the color of the heart chakra, then I wait until I feel that warmth coming back. And then what I do is I say, I'm connected to you all day long, you meaning, quote unquote, I connect to you, love, all day long, and I give thanks for my blessings. And I disconnect from collective consciousness, which means I visualize this earth. If you look at the Milky Way and try to find the earth, it's such a little speck, like a grain of sand, so tiny, that we were so caught up in that collective consciousness, fear and worry and doubt. It's in that little planet. So if you connect even to the Milky Way in its harmony and synchronicity, you're actually way ahead. So when I disconnect, I visualize that beam of light. I just cut it in half. I visualize a pair of scissors, and I disconnect, and I let it go. But then I ask for peace and love to be sent to those that are suffering, including animals and people. And I disconnect from it because I don't want it to pull me down. Because
Right.
if you go into worry, you're going to actually attract that collective consciousness of worry, and it's going to actually cause you to become a part of it. So that's what I do.
Good. That's a great thing to do. Right? A lot of people have always asked me that too. How can you do the work you do? And
Oh,
still,
yeah, Maria. My God, you're like Superwoman.
oh God, I don't know about Superwoman. But they asked me, how do you do it without losing your mind? What do you do? How do you balance?
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is, of course, as a teacher of the medicine wheel, a Reiki master, I have my own rituals,
Exactly.
and nature, and anybody listening, whether you have your own ritual or not, just get outside in nature, literally hug a tree, sit by
Hug
a
a
tree,
tree. Hug a tree.
let it talk
I-
to you. They're always talking to me. But for me, what I do is the first thing in the morning. First, I try to interpret my dream from the night before I even move my head on the pillow, because my dreams are always, predictive for me. But I always start, I'll go outside, I'll look over my wheel, and I just quote the Reiki principles. Just for today, I'm going to be happy. Just for today, I'm going to be stress-free. I can adapt it any way I need.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, with thanks. But the last thing I do at the end of the day is when I get in bed, that's when I send my long distance Reiki to people that have asked for it. So I start my
and
day.
Thank you very much for that, because you've sent it to me.
Oh, well, that's my pleasure, Monica. But the thing is, if you start your day in a sacred manner and you end your day in a sacred manner, you can't have a bad day.
Well, what happens is when you start off your day like that, it sets the tone for the day. And what happens is that, for instance, if you get a flat tire, you're going to end up in front of a gas station instead of in the freeway. So all things work out in its best for us when we set the tone for the day. We get the best possible outcome, and that's worth it to me.
Absolutely.
Even if when people get upset when they take the wrong exit and they're like, oh, they're swearing up a storm, and damn it, I'm going to be late. And I always say the spirit of time is never too late. So I always feel that when there's a bigger picture, you understand that you took that exit to prevent yourself from getting into an accident.
I always feel that way.
Always. But there's a lot of people that still get really annoyed and they lose their temper. And I'm like, don't you realize that the universe is working in your favor? It's not what happens to us. It's what's happening for us.
Right, absolutely. So, what I'm noticing now, and I don't know if you are too, I, of course, have a lot of clients that are very spiritually awake. A lot of them are very gifted. They're gifted healers, they're gifted readers, whatever their gift is. And what I'm finding is the majority of them for the past month or so are under attack. They have no energy, they feel sick.
Yeah.
People at work are, creating problems for them. And I have to remind them to work their spiritual program, because something about being human, we tend to forget what we know works when we're in the middle of something.
Yeah, and David calls it going back to default behavior, which easily happens. We have to stop looking at things the way we used to. We have to say, wait a minute, no, this is happening for me. What is the lesson for me? Oh, change what's going on inside of us, because the outer reflection of this world that constantly changes is actually showing us what changes we have to make on the inside. That's the purpose of it, not for us to respond with, oh, shit, why is this happening to me?
Right, right.
It's not happening to you. It's happening for you. And so it's a great way to gauge where we need to make changes. What a beautiful gift that is.
Absolutely. My teacher, Sunbear, used to say, if you start your day cursing your alarm clock, how do you expect to have a good day?
Well, I changed that because I never wanted an alarm clock, so I went into my own business like 45 years ago. God, I'm that old. Anyway, so, good thing I don't pay attention to numbers, because it really does slow down the aging process. The thing is that I never liked alarm clocks. I'm not an early morning person. I stay up till 2 or 3 in the morning, and then I get up I do my all my meditation, visualization, prayers at 8:30 and get up at 9. So I start my day at 11.
That sounds good to me. Me too.
That cycle works for me really, really well, because I resented alarm clocks. I resented someone waking me up and shaking me, which is really bad for the nervous system. It's going to piss you off, because the nervous system might not be finished with the sleep cycle. So when we're in the delta level or even theta and someone wakes us up like an alarm clock or someone touching us, it actually disturbs the nervous system and it can cause us to go, like nuts, like nervous and edgy and irritable. So it's better to come up with a natural cycle, and that's my cycle. So I wake up in a good space, but I always choose which master am I going to serve, so to speak, as it says in the book. Choose one master, either fear or love, worry or faith, doubt or self-love, And so you gotta pick and choose on a daily basis which quote-unquote master you're going to serve that day. And I'm using the word master because that's the way it was written in the books originally back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
So, and
right.
that, it makes sense to me. And
listen, all day long we're creating our reaction to the reality. Okay.
Always. And the key is, how are we going to react? It shows how much we grow when we look at not reacting, but looking at it as, okay, what shifts do I need to make? Like Einstein said, raise your frequency to that which you want and you can't help but get it. Life is energy and that's all there is. This is not a philosophy, this is physics. When you memorize that particular quote and even print it out, it really keeps us on track.
Right, absolutely. Well, like you, I detest alarm clocks. I haven't worn a watch in, God, it's got to be 25, 30 years. I don't like living my life by a clock. That really bothers me. So I'm glad, in 1985, I decided to start my own business because I really didn't care for the 9-to-5 lifestyle.
Oh, no, never.
But,
never. And the thing is that when I wake up, I feel really, really good because I did get a full night's sleep. It might have been only 5 hours, but it's still enough for me. Mm-hmm. And I really enjoy, and I'm ready with a passion to really work with people. And because, like I said, lately my mediumship work has been like 80% of my business. It's because so many souls are leaving this planet. Yet when I communicate with them, they're super happy that they've left.
Right. Sometimes I'm jealous. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they go back home, and we have a purpose here, Maria. There are certain people. I got the calling at age probably 16, back in 1960-something, that I was to do this kind of work, and I listened. You either get a calling or you don't get a calling, and I did. At a very early age, my first mediumship experience was when I was 11. That's when the first voice came to me, and it happened to be a very well-known person, which I won't mention. But when I wasn't able to verify that information until just last year.
Uh-huh.
That in fact, that particular spirit that came to me and gave me information was exactly the person that I thought it was, and it was verified last year. It was not until 2016 that I learned. Mm-hmm. That was a long wait.
I know. Well, that people say, oh, it's a gift, but sometimes it's not a gift, especially when you're young and you want to be like everybody else and you got all these voices around you and you're seeing things nobody else is seeing and you're like, uh-oh, am I nuts?
Yeah, and mine started a lot with extraterrestrials because I've had a lot of experiences. That's a whole other subject, but they have appeared in my room and they move things and they throw things across the room and I'm like, I just start laughing and I clap. I go, do it again.
Wow.
And other people go, aren't you scared of that? I go, oh, hell no. Because you see their hologram. They come in as a hologram.
Well, I always call them playful spirits that like to mess you around, move your stuff around, flick your lights on and off your TV, things like that. But
well, when you see these extraterrestrials from Andromeda, they're either 7 feet tall, blonde and blue-eyed, or they look Asian. And believe me, I had an experience over I guess it was late summer, where I was taken into a craft and they surgically, cut into me. And I said, isn't that going to hurt me? You're not using anything. And he said, you're not going to feel a thing. The only thing I can't figure out is if my physical body was watching my spiritual body or if my spiritual body was watching my physical body. I still don't know. But they took out something from the right side at the bottom. And I thought, what the hell is it? And he showed it to me. It was very small. Well, interestingly enough, about 6 weeks later, I went in for an emergency appendectomy.
Wow.
I think he was trying to tell me
right.
he's going to have the surgery. And he looked very Asian.
Uh-huh.
But when they appear, and they came, even a month before that, they took my DNA because I felt the needle go in my side in my bedroom. And I looked up and I saw the Asian woman. And I said, you're just taking my DNA for some reason, aren't you? She said, yes. So I don't know. That's kind of an interesting thing.
Right.
You can't get into extraterrestrial study unless you're ready.
Right. And that's the other thing is, a lot of people want to be ready before they're ready, and then they freak themselves out with what happens.
Exactly.
I wanted to tell you a story because, I have weird shit happen to me all the time. As you know.
It's kind of normal though, isn't it?
Well, for us, yeah. For regular people, I think they would have to wear it depends to live our lives. But I was out to lunch with this extremely handsome man last week.
Nice.
And we're having this big conversation. We're talking about spiritual stuff. We're talking about cults and the cult mind and the part of the brain that's damaged for people to follow, cults and religions. And all the while, I did not know that this cult leader, demon, whose little cult isn't far from where I live, was sitting in the next booth. And he gets up to leave, and he actually accosts me. He says, "Are you Meria?" he says, and then he asked me if I knew this certain person who I had worked with to break her out of his cult. And as a result of her leaving, 15 other people had left.
Really?
And I knew that I was going to get the blame even when I was working with this young woman. I says, "I guarantee you these cult leaders are going to blame me." I said, "But I don't really give a shit." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, he remembered me, right? So he asked me if I knew that girl. And I said, "Well, yeah." I said, "Aren't you related to her?" And he says, "Well, not anymore now that she left spirit." And then he has the nerve to say, in such a nasty way, right? Yeah. And I didn't say anything to this guy. He says, "I want you to know that I'm a medium too." Just like that. And I looked at him and I was so tempted to say, "Well, that's great. I'm a small," but I didn't.
Well, I'm a happy medium.
Right. The guy I was having lunch with looked at me after that guy left. And he said, "What the hell was that?" And I got to tell him the whole story. So, when you are of the light and you're a powerful person because you realize you're a spiritual being inside a small human body, but that doesn't limit your power or your strength.
Yeah.
I had no willies from this guy. I had felt no threat. As a matter of fact, I forgot all about it because I was having such a good time with this guy the rest of the day. That until one of my girlfriends mentioned the name of this girl, that's when the story came back to me. I said, "Holy shit." I said, "I got to tell you what happened to me at lunch." Because to me, those people are so insignificant that even if they come up against my face, I just discard them. They're not even there. A lot of times, I don't know about you, Monica, but when I'm out in public, especially with a friend, I don't see anybody else. It's we're the only two people there. I don't see anybody else. If you asked me to describe the waiter, the waitress, I couldn't do it.
Yeah. And do you notice that intensity, sometimes people can't handle it because you're looking right in their eyes. Mm-hmm. So there's certain people that have a hard time with it. And I'm like, well, I'm not acting weird or anything. I'm just focused on you. It's like I'm not looking through your soul at this point. When I actually am, but I don't let them know that.
I like when people say, are you looking into my mind? Are you reading my mind? And I say, would you enter a dirty room without knocking? Yeah. It's the people that want to enter my mind. I always tell them, you better be ready for the ride of your life because you won't be able to handle what's going on inside my head.
Yeah. Well, I have a potty mouth, as you know, and
that's why I love you.
Yeah, I don't care about what people have to say. They just get kind of shocked. I go, "Did that offend you? If it did, I won't do it. But fuck that."
Well, I'm so Brooklyn. It's always too bad, too sad. That's one of my favorites.
I love you. I love you. I love you. I think this is when I first saw your picture, we were both doing shows in London via Skype. Right. And when I saw your face, I actually flew there to the people's voice, and I saw your picture, and I said, "David, I've got to meet her." I was so drawn to you, and I thought, this is like a kinship here. And so I finally got up the nerve, and I thought, okay, look for her email. And that's when I contacted you, and you answered back, and I went, yes.
Well, we owe David for introducing the two of us.
Exactly.
Listen, and this is another reason I do the show, Monica. And you've heard me say it, and I'm sure you feel the same. I don't do this show for everybody. I do this show for my soul group. So finding you was finding another member of my soul group. My listeners are members of my soul group. My guests are. this is a safe space for all of us to come together and really learn, but also learn how to separate ourselves from the madness out there.
There's a great book called Messages from Michael by Chelsea Quinn Yarborough, and it really talks about not only our own theme, our soul age, but also our overleaps and how certain core people keep coming into our lives. Every lifetime after lifetime, they could be a group of 3, 6, 9, or 12. And when you meet people out of the most unusual set of circumstances, they are part of your soul group. So that's a book, it's one of my favorite books. I recommend everyone to read that one.
That sounds
You
great.
learn a lot about yourself, you know?
Right.
I'm a 7th level old sage. Yeah, I don't shut up. But,
No, not you. I don't either.
You're a sage artisan. I think you're a sage artisan mix is what I'm getting. So, yeah, I think you would enjoy that. You can buy used copies on Amazon.
Well, we'll have everybody look for it. Messages from Michael. Now, we're living in a crazy time, and before we go to break, I want to talk about what we're going to teach you when we come back.
Okay.
We're living in a crazy time. I'm finding a lot of people can't and don't know how to get centered and how to ground themselves. And I mean, we need to know how to ground ourselves because the world is upside down. So Monica and I will be back and with that information right after the break. So stay with us. Hi, this is Maria Heller. If you're enjoying this show, please consider listening to the rest of it, along with hundreds of other hours of education, by a small subscription on my site. Get over to meria.net, meria.net. You are the only thing that supports this show. There's no corporate control, and there's plenty of education on site. So please consider either a subscription or a donation to keep the work going. There are too many alternative voices out there that are being silenced because of lack of support. So if you don't want MSM to be the only mind-controlling news out there, please consider supporting the people that support you and help us all save something for the future for our children. Thank you so much.